Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let's chant verses number 1, 5 and 17 and 18 and 19 also. 17, 18 and 19. So number 1. Excuse me. Rupam drishyam lochanam drik tadrishyam driktu manasam drishyadhi vrittaya sakshi drigeva natu drishyate nodeti na astametyesha na vriddhim yati nakshayam swayam vibhatyatha anyani bhasayet sadhanam vina. Verse 17. Asya jivatvamaropat sakshinyapyapi bhasate avritau tu vinishtayam bhede bhate payati tat tatha sarg brahmanoscha bhedam avritya tishtati ya shaktistat vashat brahma vikritvena bhasate atrapyapi vritti nashena vibhati brahma sargayoh bhedastayor vikarasyat sargena brahmani kvachit. Once again on number 19. Atrapya vritti nashena vibhati brahma sargayoh bhedastayor vikarasyat sargena brahmani kvachit. Okay. So this is a Drg Drsya Viveka text. Is a good foundational text, and so we have to look at all aspects of what is being talked about as a foundation, and I urge you to also study Swami Atma's book to make sure that your foundation is very solid. There's more detail in that book than the one that we have time for in the class. So it'll be very good if you can also do that. And I think in terms of my classes, what I'm hoping to do is to speed it up a little bit, because right now we're spending a fair amount of time understanding each verse with some depth, but I think we need to make a quick revision of the whole entire text, a little quicker revision of the entire text. And so I hope to study, to do more than one verse per class. So anyway, those comments. So what we did last week was asya jivatvam aropat sakshini api avabhasate avritau tu vinishtayam bhede bhate apayati tat. So, we saw that there is an issue where the jiva means the living human being, as you conclude yourself to be, is really a superimposition of two factors, right? So one is Atma, the other one is Anatma. And this distinction is hidden from you because of certain power which is the hiding power of Maya Shakti. And this should not be seen as something very esoteric and something which is, we don't understand how this is done or anything like that. Because even every day, a portion of the Maya Shakti called Nidra Shakti, the power of sleep. The power of sleep means, it's an interesting, very important thing to see. It is not just sleep, but a power of sleep. So this is called Nidra Shakti. So the word Shakti is an important one. So supposing you have hiding power. So Nidra means the sleep, the power of sleep. It is not just hiding, simple hiding. Because simple hiding means that you don't see what's on the other side of the room because of the wall. So this is called the hiding in power of hiding. But Nidra Shakti is much more important than that. You just imagine what it can do. It transforms your whole life from the one that you are used to living as in a waking state into a completely different state altogether. So similarly to Nidra Shakti, if Nidra Shakti can do this to you and I, just a normal Nidra Shakti means the power of sleep. The power of sleep is a very powerful phenomena. Powerful phenomena. If that can be done through the individual, imagine what the entire Maya Shakti can do. The Maya Shakti is not any different. It's just in a very much more elaborate and powerful version of that. So what the Maya Shakti does is that it hides the distinction between the Atma and the Anatma and makes them look like the same. So you see there are two aspects. We've studied all this. This is all revision. That it is not just the hiding but also the vikshepa that comes about it. So similarly, in the case of a dream, it is not just hiding it from you but also creating an alternate reality which is the dream reality. So very similar to that is that we make a mistake about who we are because of the inability to distinguish between Atma and Anatma. We make it into a single one. And as a result, it's very obvious to us, all kinds of funny things happen. Now I take things that are not really there to be there. And to be there as a reality. To be there doesn't make any difference, but to be there as a reality makes a ton of difference. So I look at other people who are also playing a role, but I don't see it playing a role. I think this is what life is all about, and I belittle my own reality. My own role I don't see as a role, and as a result, funny things happen. This is what happens. And once the distinction between Atma and Anatma is removed, then everything becomes clearer, and then I have a different view of what the world is. Now, so this is verse number 17. Let's go to verse number 18. He says, Tatha. So the word Tatha also is important because Tatha means in that manner. Therefore, similarly to what? Similar to number 17. The phenomena that creates a funny view of the world, more than a funny, a seriously distorted view of the world to me, in that manner. This is because it creates an internal lack of distinction between Atma and Anatma. So Atma means my Sakshi, and Anatma means the person that I think I am, this me. So there is a mix-up between them, between the Sakshi and the Anatma, that is the reflection, as we have been studying. So because of that, it gives me a false reading of the world. This false reading of the world is also there when I look at things externally. Number 17 was internal, number 18 is external. How? This is what is being explained. So let's look at it. He says, Tatha Sarga Brahmanoscha Bhedam Avritya Tishtati Ya Shakti Tadvashat Brahma Vikritena Bhasate. So let's look at the English translation of that, and then I will explain it. Similarly, he says, Tatha means similarly, Brahman appears changeful in nature on account of this veiling power that conceals the distinction between the creation and Brahman. Correct. Good translation. So Sarga means how things appear in the world to you. It's called Sarga. Sarga means the plurality. Everything that is happening. Things that are still, things that are moving, things that are creating problems, changing, the effect on it, everything, weather, people, etc. This is called Sarga. And then there is another thing called Brahman, which is non-moving, always there, the nature of reality. So the non-real Sarga and the real Brahmana, this distinction is not clear to me. So just like the Atma and Anatma distinction is not clear to me because it is hidden by Maya Shakti, the same Maya Shakti hides the distinction between Brahman and Sarga. This is the point that this number 18 is making. And when this is removed, then the same clarity which is approached in verse number 17 becomes even clearer in verse number 18. So that's the meaning of it. So now that's what the verse is. Now let us look at the meaning of it. So it says the following. He says, so now an important concept that we as students of Vedanta should be very clear about. This is really the most important concept I feel in Vedanta, that we ought to be very clear, very firm about this, is the following, which is that all changes anywhere are depending on a changeless basis. This is the law. All changes are not puffs in the air which have no basis whatsoever. They actually have a basis, a content, what is called in Sanskritam adhishthanam. This is an important underlying concept in Vedanta that one should learn and not forget and use it as the basis of all our secondary understanding. This is the issue. Okay? And this is the main important thing and extremely crucial difference between Hinduism and Buddhism. Buddhism doesn't grasp this at all. And I don't know how they can not grasp this. Very strange. But anyway, the basis of Hinduism means the Vedic knowledge, is that all changes have a changeless basis. And the changeless basis is not affected by changes. So the example of the golden ornaments, the clay and the various parts of the clay are examples given again and again. Same thing on the ocean and the waves. The waves can be seen as changes, and the changeless water is the basis of all the waves. Same thing, different examples. So here, if that is the case, we see changes. Sarga is nothing but change. Every minute is different, every second is different, unpredictability. This is the change. The question is, what is the basis of that change? Because the concept of Vedanta is that you cannot have a change without a changeless basis. So, that being the case, Brahman, the the entity called Brahman, which in the final analysis will be equated to Atma. But at least in the beginning, just take it as some external entity called Brahman is in fact the basis of all sarga. Okay, clear? Brahman is the basis of all sarga. Why? Because all changes have to have a basis. And so the entire world has a basis in Brahman. Now, this being the case, I don't see Brahman as a separate entity from the world. I experience the world, I'm experiencing all the changes, I'm affected by it, but I don't see Brahman anywhere. All I see is individual experiences that affect me. Changing, unpredictable, unknowable. These are the changes. What I don't see is that they belong there's a basis to them, they belong to that basis called Brahman. And this distinction is hidden from me, and in fact if you say that there is something called Brahman, and I try to grapple with it and I try to understand it, the Brahman itself keeps changing. See, so I don't have the distinction between Sarga and Brahman. I don't see Brahman as not being changing at all. I don't see that. And the reason I don't see that is that even when you tell me that there is a thing called Brahman, I see them as nothing but changes. Brahman as also being changing. This is the thing. So in number 18, it says that I don't see the internal basis as being separate from the internal changes, and I don't see the external basis as the basis of the external changes. And this lack of clearly seeing these two is the reason for the Maya. The cause for that is the Maya Shakti. Exactly like when I am in dreaming, I don't see the distinction between the dreamer and the waker. Only when I wake up, then I see that the status of the dreamer as a separate entity is not true. It just appears like that, but it's not true at all. So this is the basis of what would be called why I see the things as being problematic in life, because I don't see the unchanging nature of either the Atma or Brahman. Those two are hidden from me. So this is number 18. Now let's go to number 19. So the number 19 now simply summarizes what I have been saying. So there's probably, you won't find anything totally different, but maybe, well, let's see. So he says, Atra api avriti nashena vibhati brahma sargayoho bhedaha tayoho vikaras syat sarge na brahmani kvachit. The English translation of that is, externally also the distinction of Brahman and the creation. The distinction of Brahman and the creation. Brahmani and Sarga becomes clear by the distinction of this veiling. And the distinction of the veiling is done through words. So the power of words is the distinction of veiling. Well, we can discuss that later on. But in any case, due to the taking away this veiling means the cover. Cover of what? The cover of a distinct difference between Brahman and the creation. Then things become clear, and among the two, the modification is in the creation, never in Brahman. So, atrapi means here also. Here means external, because the topic was the externality of this creation in number 18. So he says, atrapi, even in this case, because of avriti nashena. Avriti means a hiding. Nasha means description of that hiding. By removal of that hiding, then the bheda of the Brahma Sargayoho, vibhati Brahma Sargayoho bhedas tayoho vikaras syat sargena brahmani kvachit. So he says that really speaking, how does this happen? It means that all the creations are localized, they do not affect the basis. So just like, for example, in a goldsmith's shop, there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of creation of ornaments. All these goldsmiths, I would imagine, I've never been there, but supposing you go to the back room of a goldsmith shop, or perhaps in a factory, all these people are busy making ornaments, and different kind of ornaments, and some that are very delicate, some that are hanging by small chains, And there is a skill involved where the gold has been pulled into very small threads. So there is a gold thread which is very delicate, and they are holding all these parts of the ornaments together, just like a beautiful necklace made for women to wear around their neck. How delicate some of these portions are. This is all creation. You know, it's interesting, in the many of the Upanishads, they also talk a lot about creation. There's a lot of description about creation. And you look at the Taittiriya Upanishad, for example, it says, Akashat, no, Atmanaha Akashat Utpannaha. From the Atma, Akashat means the space is born. Akashat Vayu. Then from the Vayu, from the Akasha, the air is born. Akashat Vayu. Vayoho Agnihi. Then from the air, there is a birth of fire. Agnehe Apaha. From the Agni, from the fire, then water is born. Like that, there is a big description about creation. So how can you say that there is no creation? The Upanishads themselves are talking about creation. So, in this manner, suppose you were to go to a goldsmith's factory. What you will find is that there are a lot of work, there is a lot of work going on by some very skilled people making some delicate ornaments, because it would take, I would imagine, a great deal of skill so that when you pull the gold into some very small, thin strands, it doesn't break. And then you have, I suppose you'll have to melt it and keep pulling on it until you get the right consistency of the thread, and then you freeze it at that point. You don't really melt it anymore. You let it now become solid. And then how can it all be bent together? All these are creations. But you know what? They may have elaborate looking creations, but they do not affect the gold. Do not affect the gold. And then then they are really not separate from the gold. How can you say they are not separate from the gold? Because the gold is simply nothing but a form and a certain name to it, like a thread, gold thread. So thread is a form and there is a name called thread. And so how can you say that there is not a separate creation? Because the shine of the thread is the shine of gold. The weight of the thread is the weight of gold. The look of the thread is the look of gold. Everything is nothing but borrowed from the gold, 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 gold. Swami Dayanandji once gave us a humorous incident in his life, which is really that happened. He was giving some talks in, I believe in London, if I recall. And so he gave a series of talks on Vedanta in London, public talks. And one of the listeners of the talk was the owner of a gold shop, and a very wealthy person. He was a big shop, big showroom, and he had a number of things displayed there for both men and women and so on. So he requested Swamiji to come and visit his shop one day. And Swamiji agreed, so he went to his shop and he was saying, Swamiji, I really appreciate what you have been teaching, and this has really been, has had a great effect in my life. I'm very thankful to you for your insight into what's going on, and it has really revealed the truth about myself, which is I could not believe. And as a gift for what you have given me, I would like you to just go around the shop and pick one thing that you like, and whatever the shape is and so on and so forth, you just name it and this is yours. So please make sure. So Swamiji says, one thing? He says, yes, one thing. Anything, one thing. Swamiji says, I want gold. So the shopkeeper says, I beg your pardon? What did you say? Swamiji says, you asked me to pick up one thing, I want gold. So now the shopkeeper was both puzzled and worried, both at the same time. Puzzled because there is no single ornament called gold. They're all gold. And worried because if Swamiji wants to really go through with his sankalpa, that I want this gold as you have offered it me, means the whole shop becomes mine. Swamiji of course laughed about it and he said, no, I don't need anything. I don't wear any gold jewelry. There are some Swamis who wear all kinds of funny stuff, rings and this, that or the other. But Swami Dayanandaji was not one of those. He said, no, I don't want any gold. That was very nice of you to invite it. My blessings to you. I'm taking your leave. And so that's the situation. You have all these changes that are really nothing but gold itself. Similarly, when the Upanishads like Taittiriya Upanishad and Chandogya and all of these other Upanishads talk about creation in a very elaborate manner, that from the Akasha came the Vayu, from the Vayu came the Agni, from all this is exactly like, supposing there is a very skilled goldsmith. Supposing there is an owner, supposing Swamiji goes to this shop and Swamiji says, I want to know how these things are made. I'm very interested. So the owner will say, I have the right person to explain it to you. So he calls his chief goldsmith and he says, please, Swamiji is very interested in understanding all this. Can you take him to the back room and explain it to him, explain it to him how this is all done? So he says, that's my pleasure. Please, Swamiji, please come. And he says, okay, here's what we do. We first remove the impurities by heating the gold. Step number one. Then once the gold becomes, like that, I'm not going to go through all the details, it'll take too long. But he's going through the steps involved, which are quite varied and quite elaborate, and how a single strand of gold, which can be bent without being broken, can be created. And it might have several steps. So the Upanishads are like that. It goes through the various stages, how creation is made, how the whole thing is, interconnected from the Pancha Mahabhutas, the five different great elements, how Ishvara has made all of this. But that doesn't mean that the creation is any real. See, that is the important point. You have a kind of a creation. And the creation is important because there are buyers for these. You cannot advertise and say, open for business, come for buying gold. The only person who will go there to buy gold is one who wants to convert his notes to a gold. Interesting, this is just on the side. So, it has some value in the transactional world. I think we went through this, the transactional worth was Vyavaharika Sat. So there are three kinds of truth. There is the Paramarthika Sat, there is Vyavaharika Sat, and there is Pratibhasika Sat. Those are the three kinds. So the Vyavaharika Sat means that it is transactional truth. It is not really true. Okay? So here Swami Maheshanji had given a beautiful example. He said, in fact, I learnt the meaning of the word rupee. In Indian currency is called rupee. You know why it's called rupee? It comes from the word rupa. And the word rupa has two meanings. One is beauty. Beautiful form is called rupa. Rupavati, one who has a woman, Vuvati because it's feminine. Rupavati means a woman who has a beautiful form is called Rupavati. So rupa means beauty. The other meaning of rupa is silver. Okay? And the Indian currency is called rupaya. Rupya or rupaya or rupee. There are different names to it. Rupaya in different languages. But in English and external ones it's called rupee. Rupee is just like you say a dollar. So the Indian currency is called rupee. So Maheshanji says, you know why? This was interesting. I never thought of it this way. Maheshanji says rupee means like a silver coin. Like a silver coin. Because the basis of all transactions in the old days was rupee. Rupee was silver coins. Because supposing there is there's barter involved. So either there is a barter involved where you say, okay, I'll give you so much corn and you give me so much rice, and this is how we exchange things. Or that there is actually a silver coin. Gold coins are even different. But let's say a silver coin. That was the transactional, the currency for transaction. Over time, there was a convention made that what if we come out with a piece of paper and it will be like a rupee, like a silver coin, but it will be called a rupee. Why don't we do that? So they said, okay, that would be the transactional value of it. That will be okay. But the transactional value is very vulnerable. Very limited, very vulnerable. Like for instance, if you travel outside of India and you go to the Wells Fargo Bank in Los Altos, like I do, I actually have quite a bit of Indian currency from India, and I can never cash it, because they'll look at it and says, what is this funny looking note? I don't understand what it is. Please take it back. This is what will happen. Useless. Or it can be demonetized. One day, Modi ji completely demonetized 1,000 rupee notes. So the transactional value, this you cannot do to a silver coin. A silver coin is a silver coin, the real thing. But you can masquerade it as a silver coin and call it a rupee. So why are we saying this? So really speaking, all the sargas are like a rupee note. They appear like the real Brahman, but they are not. Only Brahman is Brahman. They are kind of reflections of the Brahma. They are taken to be a transaction, but they don't really have a truth of their own. And so therefore, this is not clear to me. And this comes from and so why is this not clear to me? Because it does not appear obvious to me without thinking about it. Very much like, I think, the example of a troubled wave of the ocean. Suppose the water has some consciousness in it. Along with H2O, it also has consciousness, which it does, but supposing it's intrinsic to the water, supposing there's some consciousness to it, then the wave of the ocean, or of a lake for that matter, but really we just take the example of an ocean because it happens very often. The wave of the ocean is going to feel that I am a troubled person. So his neighbor will say, well, you look so sad, what's the problem? He says, life is so burdensome. What is it? There's a Western saying which says, life is a bitch and then it ends. This is a funny thing, life is a bitch. And there are variations of it. They say life sucks, or whatever these funny expressions are, and then it ends. Means while you are alive, there is a problem. I am troubled, and then the end of that is that I'm no longer there. What kind of a life is this? What kind of a creation is this? So there, the wave can have a troubled life, and the neighbor will say, what's wrong with you? Why don't you have a smile on your face? He says, my existence is not good. I'm just a small changing wave, and I'm going to soon disappear. So this guru wave comes in. He says, aha! You have an unnecessary problem on yourself. He says, what do you mean unnecessary problems? Your identity is misplaced. My friend, you are looking at yourself from the standpoint of your name and form only. In fact, your reality is an unchanging water. He says, what? How is that possible? It is not only possible, it is the truth, you just don't see it. So the same thing here, how come I don't see the distinction between Brahman and Sarga, or between Atma and Anatma? It is because I have not yet been introduced to the very truth which has to be done through words. There is no physical change required. It is just a cognitive change based on some wisdom of the scriptures. That's it. So the experience itself doesn't change. We were just discussing this in the previous class. That Dvaita doesn't have to change. For Advaita, Dvaita doesn't mean that the lack of Dvaita. It means despite Dvaita, there is Advaita. So the experience of the sunrise doesn't have to change, but the understanding that there is no sunrise, even though it appears to be, makes all the difference. So similarly here also, he says that once these words are given, and once it is communicated properly and received properly by the mind of the individual, then you have a different view. You don't see just the changes of the world, you also see the unchanging Brahman. And that unseen Brahman you will also see next as nothing but yourself. So this is the progression of the teaching that goes on. And here Swami Viditaatmananda has taken this opportunity in this verse, number 19, to also talk about the stages of this understanding, Shravanam, Mananam and Nididhyasanam. And so I won't go into all of that. I think you know, some of you already know it, some of you may not. But you have the book to read, and I would suggest that you actually go through this, and if you have any questions you can call me, or you can write to me, And then, but I want to go on in reviewing other aspects of this as quickly as possible. So with that, we will conclude verse number 19. And with that, we come to verse 20. Verse 20 is perhaps the most quoted verse of the Drg Drsya Viveka. All over in Vedanta, this is it is quoted, and I think this is taken from some Upanishads. I'm not positive about that, but it doesn't matter. It is a very important verse and points out the nature of Brahman and the nature of the world, the nature of our experiences. It captures it in a very succinct form, and this is a verse that I would urge you to memorize. In fact, from now on, in addition to the verses number 1 and 5, we will also add number 20 in our repetition so that it becomes automatic in my mind. And then, of course, not just repeating it verbally, but to really get the understanding behind it. This is an important one. So with that preface, let's go to verse number 20. So I will repeat it a couple of times, 3 times in fact. I will do it 3 times so that to underscore the importance of this. Number 20. Asti bhati priyam rupam nama chetyam shapanchakam adyatrayam brahma rupam Jagat Rupam Tato Dvayam. Asti Bhati Priyam Rupam Nama Chetyam Shapanchakam Adyatrayam Brahma Rupam Jagat Rupam Tato Dvayam. Finally, Asti Bhati Priyam Rupam Nama Chetyam Shapanchakam Adyatrayam Brahma Rupam Jagat Rupam Tato Dvayam. Beautiful. Very important verse. So for this, let's look at the individual words, because it's some important one. We will actually understand the individual words of the sentence also. So on Swami Atmanandaji's book on page 150, this is given. And this section of the text is titled very correctly by Swamiji as the very nature of Brahman. So, we talked about the aspect of Brahman as the very basis of all the changes, all the sarga, etc. What is this Brahman that we talk about? What is the nature of it? So this section is there to explain that, the nature of Brahman. So the verse says, Asti. Asti means what is. What is existing is called Asti, as opposed to what doesn't exist. What is there is called Asti. Bhati. Bhati means one which shines as awareness. Asti Bhati. Okay, so let's just go through word by word. And this we will explain in more detail in the next class, but I think you'll get an introduction in this class itself. Then Priyam, the last word, the third one is Priyam. Asti Bhati Priyam. Priyam means one which is pleasing to you, one that you like, one which is attractive to you is called Priyam. One which is dear to you. When you say dear someone, that person. Asti Bhati Priyam. Fourth one is Rupam. Rupam means, as we were just talking about Rupa, means one that has a form. The one Rupi, Rupa, Rupam. So they're all different genders of the same thing. So Rupam means is a neuter gender. Rupa means a feminine gender. And Rupa means a masculine gender, but the same meaning. So Rupam means the very form of something is called Rupam. Then Nama. Nama means a name. Name and a form. And in really, you cannot identify an object without having both name and form. Like for example, they come out with a new discovery of a new type of fish that they had never seen before, and they take a picture of it. And nowadays, of course, with underwater photography, you can immediately see something, and you write down a temporary name for it. Discovery number 347-2. And then you come back and you find out, no, we have never seen this fish before. This happens all the time. I read somewhere that I believe, maybe I'm just approximating it and perhaps exaggerating it, 90% of all overground things, living things, have been identified. 90% of them. Of finding something which has never been categorized, has no nama, no rupa, are only 10% above the ground. Below the ground, including the sea, that percentage of known things drops drastically. I believe, from what I remember, it's as low as 10%. So 90% of the things below the ground have not yet been identified or given a name yet. Some Latin names and so on. And I guess now this is the age of the Chinese. They are going to give Chinese names to them. Everybody has to really repeat that. So that is the fifth one. So he says, Asti, Bhati, Priyam, Rupam, Namacha, cha means and, iti, like these five, Anshapanchakam. These are the five parts of anything in this world. Anything. Obviously, in the case of the unidentified objects, the nama and rupa have not yet been done, but eventually it will be done also. So this applies to everything in life. It has five parts. Asti bhati priyam nama rupam. Asti bhati priyam nama rupam. Ansha panchakam. Then the second line. In these five portions of, if you call it portions, segments or aspects, I think is a better word, because they are not distinctly different from each other. It's like, you cannot say, okay, I'm serving food and give me a small portion. I'm not hungry today. You take the bigger portion. This happens, this kind of a talk goes on continuously, and you take the bigger portion, or I want the big portion means segmentable portion. So this is not like segmentable portion, but they are different aspects of the same thing. It's still very distinct, but not something that you can pull out and remove from it. So he says, Asti bhati priyam rupam namacha iti ansha panchakam. Out of this, the first three aspects belong to Brahman, and the last two belong to Jagat. Jagat means sarga, all the changes. Okay? So it's like, supposing you are making gold ornaments, then the gold has, every ornament has five portions. So the first three portions belong to the gold. I won't go into any postulation of what the three of them will be for the gold. So let's just say that let's combine those three into a one. They will be, any gold ornaments has the following thing. Or you can say, for example, that the shine of the ornament is the shine of gold. Yeah, so let's make that. That's a good thing. So any ornament has five aspects. So one is the shine. The other one is the weight. And the third one is the color. let's just say 3. So those 3 belong to the gold. And then the Nama and Rupa belong to the ornament. Right. So the ornament means this is a necklace. So the word necklace and the form of the word necklace means the form belongs to the necklace. But the first 3, which is the shine, the weight, and the, what was the third thing I already forget. So shine, weight, and the color belongs to gold. So this is the definition of everything in this world. So Asti Bhati Priyam belongs to Brahman, and Nama Rupa belongs to things. That means the things are nothing but Brahman alone. Ornaments are nothing but gold alone. But they in fact dominate us. In the case of golden ornaments, the gold is visible right in front of us. We can see it, it's gold. Our buddhi, our thinking, our drishti, our vision may not have the gold vision. And Swami Dayananda used to say that. He says, what you have to observe if you go to a gold shop is a conversation going on between the mother and the daughter when the daughter is about to get married. And it's a heated discussion. And the daughter is saying, I don't like this design, Mom. That's not what I want to wear. And the mom says, no, honey, this is a traditional design. It never goes out of fashion. Don't you see that? She says, I don't care. I don't like it. Now it's a very delicate situation. And it's interesting in this talk that there's a father sitting on the side. And he's bored by these 2 women talking. Because they're fighting and they're arguing, and not fighting, but arguing vehemently. And he's just sitting there sort of, bored. Why? Because it has already been decided that we are going to buy an ornament of this much weight. I think we can afford this much. And now you decide what kind of it is. So in the drishti of the mother and daughter, they're not talking about gold. All they're talking about is the form and the name of what kind of a thing that you want. Fashion. They're purely arguing about fashion. Do you know something? Our life is like that. This is exactly what is happening. We are arguing. Trump should be elected. Biden should be elected. And this, that, or the other. Individual forms. We are very busy with it. I want this job, and I don't like that job. And I want that person to marry me. And I don't like that person to marry me. And I want those friends, this food. We are worried about all of the various individual changes, not realizing the very basis of all of them is the same, which is the Atma, which is the consciousness, which is Brahman. And you can spend your time arguing and so on, but at the end of the day, it does not matter. Anyway, so we will continue with this important verse for a good part of next one. And because it is so important, I want to make sure that we spend enough time talking about it. And I think we already have. but I'll complete it next time and then go forward with more. Okay, so with that I close the class. Om Asato Ma Satkamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Thank you for your comments, all of you, and I'm looking for any questions that I can answer. Don't see any. I'll wait for a couple of minutes, but I'm happy that you are able to enjoy the unfoldment of these truths. Anita, thank you. Wonderful. Good. So very happy that you could attend, and we will continue to unfold this knowledge in a understandable way as we go on. So look forward to the next class with you. And so with that I take your leave, and we'll see you next week. Hari Om.